Hello everyone, nubkeks here. Welcome back to Nub Raids. We are on the Raid Shadow Legends test server, and you have been asking for it, and I'm really happy to bring you this one, which is a Helicath run in Hydra. And not only is it a Helicath run, but this is a full auto, one key hard team. So this should give you a really good way to prepare, in fact, for the next rotation of Hydra. Those of you who are observant will have seen here in the background, these Hydra heads are not the heads that are currently there on the live server, okay? On the test server, they actually gave us, it was a really good move by Plarium, very smart. They actually put in Hydra Rotation 2. So this is actually going to be the rotation in a couple of weeks' time on the live servers. And the reason this is a great thing is because, well, pretty much no one's going to have Helicath here in Rotation 1. You're only going to be able to start really using him once you've fused him, and that's going to be really during Rotation 2 is when you're going to be bringing him out. So we can actually see here on the test server how he's going to perform against that upcoming rotation, which is great. And to answer, I can actually answer this for you straight away, right off the bat. Is Helicath good for Hydra? The answer is, I think he's only okay. Actually, he's only okay. And the reason I say that is his kit is obviously incredibly powerful. He has an insane amount of protection for your team. But, and it's a big but, you have to jump through some hoops to make it work. It's actually quite difficult to make it work well. So this team I've set up here actually has several very specific things going on to make it come together. Now, when it does come together, like I said, it's a full auto, one key team. It's really good. One exception, I'm saying full auto. The one thing I did do was actually just whenever someone was eaten, I click on them, or whenever the Head of Decay puts a shield on someone, I'd click on that as well, just to focus fire them down. This team actually has reasonably low damage output, so it's just important to do that to make sure we lock everything in. But yeah, anyway, yeah, Helicath. Let's talk about what you have to do to make him work. Let's talk about that. Obviously, I'm presuming you're familiar with his kit. His A1 double hitter places weaken. His A2, really big shield for your team that scales based off defense. And then his A3 is what makes it hard. His A3 gives you block damage for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. So that's obviously insane, right? Head of Wrath, just blocking all his damage at least half the time. It's so good. The big problem, of course, is that can be stolen by Head of Mischief. And if Head of Mischief steals 2 turns of block damage, then he's still going to have it, and he will be able to spread it to his team. And it can be difficult to control that. It can be difficult to stop that, especially with the Head of Decay in here in the starting rotation, who can cleanse off block buffs, cleanse off your debuffs, and all that sort of stuff. So there's definitely some technical stuff there. Let's talk about it. The first one I want to talk about, actually, is Drexthar Blood Twin. I need to sit down and do like a full video on Drexthar, but Drexthar is absolutely just incredible for this composition. Very, very full auto friendly. Drexthar, you get him for free from the bazaar, so he is an accessible champ. In fact, all the champions here are accessible. Obviously, Mithrala and Lydia, even more so, take you a long time to get, but when you get them, you will be good. Drexthar's from the bazaar. Then we've got Tanix, who's a login reward, and we've got Deliana, who's currently a login legendary as well, right? So it's a very accessible team. But what does Drexthar do that's so good? Well, his A1 is going to be placing HP burns, but more importantly than that, his passive places HP burns very frequently when he is attacked, and a lot of these heads do have AoE attacks. And we're also going to make him our Mischief tank as well. What is a Mischief tank, in case you don't know? Well, the Head of Mischief always targets the person who has the most buffs. It targets the person who has the most buffs and attempts to steal them. So we can build someone like this Drexthar. In this particular case, I'll show you all the stats at the end, but he is built, for example, with about 150 speed. So he's really, really slow, and he has really high resistance, over 450 resistance, which means that the Head of Mischief simply, unless it gets lucky, there's always a 3% chance, and that's part of what makes this tricky. There's always a 3% chance your buffs will be stolen, but 97% of the time, Drexthar will resist the turn meter steal. He will resist the buff steal, and has the added benefit that he then will very frequently be applying HP burn to the Head of Mischief, which is really good because the Head of Mischief is so fast and takes so many turns. That sort of just pulses quite a bit of damage to the enemy team. You can see him right here. He's just tanked the Head of Mischief like 3 times in a row. Been really, really effective, so super useful. So he is just absolutely great for this. On top of that, his A2 ability, his AoE attack, provokes. It's a 100% chance to provoke if the target's under HP burn. So if he does get the burn onto Head of Decay, he can actually provoke Head of Decay and delay the cleanses. Now, on full auto, doesn't really work, right? That doesn't really, you got to be lucky. It's got to randomly line up. We've got no control over it. So obviously, if you were to play this on auto, or if you were to manual Drexthar, just manual his A2. So for example, tell him in the AI preset never to use his A2, and then you can see when he's about to take a turn, and there is, for example, like this, there's going to be one turn until Head of Decay uses his ability. You could then come in and say, okay, I'm going to take manual control. I'm going to make him do his taunt on this turn. That would really up your damage and up the performance, but that was against the rules for me doing this. I wanted to do it really just full auto. He is just so good for this. He is so good. And having that Mischief tank is pretty much essential, right? It's kind of essential to make Helicath work. You really need it. I just don't really see any way around it, because block buffs is just not consistent enough, because it can be cleansed away. I mean, maybe you could have like someone that's 100% of the time provoking decay. If you can lock down decay all the time and block buffs will be consistent, then okay, maybe you could do it. But you just can't have 2 turns of block damage stolen. You just can't. It's going to completely screw you. There's just no real way around it. So the resistance tank is the best way to do it. And Drexthar is just such an easy one to bring in. And he gives you a lot of damage with that HP burn. And then the real benefit as well is that it gives you a way to hit through the poison cloud from the Head of Blight, who's one of the starting heads here this rotation as well. Difficult to deal with, but he lets you hit through, right? Because the passive from Drexthar will place burns on through the poison cloud, and then you can start attacking them. It gives you a lot more damage, especially on full auto. Now, other champs that we have in here, on the far right, Deliana. I really wanted to bring her in, so I was delighted to bring her in here for this rotation. Deliana, she is our block buff champion. She's also our she's our main source of healing. She heals quite a bit, and then she puts out those leeches, which again is going to help us to heal up. So I think that she is actually a very good combo with Helicath, right? Helicath gives you tons of shielding, tons of block damage, but he can't top up your health bars if you ever get hit without the shield or block damage on. Deliana, with just that little bit of leech and that little bit of healing on her A3, it's actually enough to keep your team pretty stable most of the time. So she's super good here. Really good. And block buffs likewise is fairly essential, and she's good affinity for most of these heads. As you can see, she's the wrong affinity for Head of Mischief, but that's okay so long as she's getting the block buffs and everything else. You can see all these other heads, she is the right affinity for it, so that's going to be good. Next up, we have Lydia. So Lydia is actually, believe it or not, very replaceable here. She's actually not that good in this composition. I know you're kind of going, what? You're crazy, but it's true. The reason being that Helicath actually gives you a very consistent source of weaken, because he's counterattacking all the time with that block damage. He's constantly hitting these heads. So he actually applies weaken himself a lot. So you don't actually need the weaken from Lydia too much. She's bringing you AoE decreased defense, and more importantly, she's bringing you speed and strengthen. Again, we can get away with the strengthen. It's not that important. We have so much defense with Helicath. The strengthen, I feel like, actually isn't that important. So I think for the most part, you would actually be better off using Lydia in a different team. I wanted to put her in for this run, though, because she is accessible. I think, for example, Shamrock would be a really good replacement here for like the Lydia, Mithrala, and Tanix section that we've got going on. Tanix brings us a consistent source of decreased speed, like she just did, and Lydia's bringing us increased speed. So it'd be very easy to bring in a Shamrock who gives you increased speed and puts decreased speed. Bring in Shamrock, and then you could bring in something like Stag Knight or Duck the Pierced or anyone like that. They could come in, any other decreased defense champion, and they could provide the decreased defense, and you'd have the weaken from Helicath. I think that would be overall better. Tanix, who I've mentioned as well, she's in here. Her passive obviously gives you some damage reduction, which is nice, but not essential in this team. The main reason I'm bringing her in, again, is for that decreased speed. She gives you a really good source of decreased speed and that small little bit of trickle healing that actually adds up over time. And it just combos, that trickle healing does combo very well with Helicath. But it's mostly the decreased speed is what I wanted. That's what I found made this more consistent. You can see we've just passed the 1 key damage. I actually ran this team as well. I took out Tanix, I put in Kinagashi. Is that her name? I can't remember her name. But the new epic, I put her in instead of Tanix. She brings a revive and she brings, some turn meter boost. And that wasn't quite, we were getting to like 20 million and then we were wiping. So it didn't quite work. So watch out for that. And then obviously she's not very good, but I wanted to bring her in because it would have been cool to have like Helicath and Deliana and her, but it didn't work. Anyway, it did work, but just not quite well enough on full auto. And then finally we have Mithrala, and I think Mithrala is again really good, but not entirely essential. So she does bring you the strength in. She brings you more shields. Those things are okay, but not that important. What I found that she did that was really good is actually the increased defense that she brings. She's a really good increased defense champion. And she also puts out the Hex. So I feel like you probably do want another increased defense champion. It just makes Helicath's shields bigger and more consistent. And I think that's useful. But the Hex is actually great. One really nice thing, you can see it right there, is that when you put the Hex debuff out against the Head of Mischief, Helicath rips it apart. He absolutely destroys it, because whenever anyone who has block damage on them is hit, Helicath counterattacks. Now, normally that counterattack gets redirected by Head of Mischief's passive. You can see right there, for example, Head of Mischief targeted something else. It's not quite perfect, so we might get slightly screwed here at this point. Yeah, see, look at this. There's block damage out for 2 turns on everyone. Right, we're not quite perfect. The block buffs wasn't on. There were more debuffs on Tanix at that point, so awkward, but we're able to pull through. But it's definitely awkward, so you can see that the trickiness here, the difficulty of running Helicath. What was I saying? Oh my god, I've completely forgotten. Something crucial, something life-changing. The Hex. Yeah, when Hex is on Mischief and Helicath counterattacks, he will hit Mischief, and he rips him apart. He hits so hard, and Mischief is so squishy, he absolutely destroys him. And again, when you are running a resistance tank like Drexthar, who's very slow, Drexthar will have very, very high uptime on block damage and will get hit a lot by Mischief. So you actually kill Mischief really fast with those counterattacks from Helicath. It's actually kind of hilarious. You know, one slight thing right here, for example, you could see that Tanix actually did her decreased speed attack on this decapitated head because she prioritizes hitting the decapitated head, but she didn't crit because it's spirit affinity, and therefore she didn't land decreased speed. So again, if you were playing on manual, you could have targeted a good affinity head for Tanix, got the decreased speed on everything, and that would have led up to more damage overall. But you know, it is what it is. We're not going to worry too much. But you can see, basically, this is what's happening. At this point, we're just sort of running it out. We're going to be hitting these guys. One thing to note, we didn't have Head of Torment come in this run, and Head of Torment really messes you up. The best thing to do with Head of Torment is just to kill it as quickly as possible. It's quite squishy. And again, Helicath will rip it apart very fast. He will destroy that head. So you just have to do it and hope that you are lucky. Because the really nice thing, if we skip on for the last little bit here, what I want to show you, you can see there's nothing much happening here at the end, but check this out again. This is live in the game right now, guys. You now have the free regroup. You can decide to keep your result, lock it in, spend your key, or you can just free regroup out. So you can just leave this running on auto. Yeah, it's better if you're watching, you know, Netflix or YouTube or something like that, and you just target the heads when they eat your champions. It's going to make it much more consistent, but you can leave it just running on auto, and then you'll eventually get a good run and then lock it in. And if it doesn't quite work out from the randomness, you can do a free regroup. But here we go. We can see the damage here. So yeah, Helicath actually coming in with 6 million damage. Deliana, so impressive, with 6.5 million damage and 1.5 million healing. Like, she is super, super good. Not to mention the leeches that she's putting out that helps everyone else heal themselves. And then Drexthar doing the most damage with almost 9 million with those HP burns being applied by his passive. And yeah, it's a really nice team. It's a really nice team. So the key things that we have in here together, Helicath, but he needs that resistance tank with Drexthar. Then we got the block buffs from Deliana supplementing. She's healing us, topping us up. Then we have increased speed, decreased speed. We've got that control. And then like some decreased defense so we can do some damage. And yeah, Mithrala worked well. So I was really happy with this composition. I was really, really happy. So here we go. Let me show you the team setup, right? Because when you open up, you want to be a little bit careful. So these were the presets, right? So Helicath, priority 1 on his shield. Just make sure he does his shield as much as possible. Then I had Devoted Servants as priority 2. So he will delay this sometimes, is essentially what's going to happen. But I figured that was probably worth it a bit more. This does pretty good damage as well. So I don't know. I went for this. I'm not sure. You could maybe leave him by default, but I thought this would be better. Deliana, we turn off her decreased resistance move. Don't need it with these champions. They all have enough accuracy. So we can turn that off. She can just spam her AoEs for more damage. Priority 1 on Know Your Place, of course. Drexthar, priority 1 on his AoE. Mithrala, so I actually have her open with Libation of Pain. This is something you might have noticed. If I can find the start of this run, one thing you'll notice at the start of this run, because we have Decay and Blight in together, very annoying at the start. So what we do, there you go. You see what happens there? We come in and you see what we did? Basically, we make it so we don't place debuffs on the whole enemy team. We just put block buffs on everyone, and that's it. So then the head of Decay comes in. He goes, there's not enough buffs out here. And he's just going to put a shield on one person, which means that then Head of Blight comes in, tries to Poison Cloud, but Deliana has placed block buffs on most of these heads. So you're good, right? So that's sort of what we're doing with this opener. So with Mithrala, we don't want her to open with Sigil of Toxic Glory, which she will do by default. That would put Hex on everything. And Hex on 4 enemies, plus block buffs on 4 enemies, is going to trigger that AoE cleanse. I think it's 7 debuffs. I could be wrong. It's 6 or 7. So I just have her open with her A1. Most of those heads that are there are immune to poison, so you're fine. Then she's set up like this. It doesn't really matter. I think you could set it up either way, but I set her up like this. Then Lydia, same thing. We open with her A1, so she doesn't waste Siren's Wail. Again, you could be smart about this too. You could have Drexthar potentially hold on to Burning Lash and then try to lock down Head of Decay potentially. But we're just leaving him full auto. We're not worrying about that too much. Kind of too much hassle. And then Tanix, again, she's going to open with her A1, so she'll save the decreased speed until after that sort of initial cleanse. So there we go. That is the setup. If I show you the builds on these particular champions, obviously lots of legendaries. Lydia, she's coming in. She is built like this. She just needs good speed and build a reasonably tanky. You know, it's Lydia. By the time you get her, you're pretty far into the game. You're going to have her in really good gear because she's like top 10 champion in the game, if not top 5. So good. Mithrala, also up there. Absolute top champion. Again, similarly, she needs just super high accuracy, really good speed, and that's pretty much it. For her masteries, she's masteried like this for Arena, and Lydia is masteried like this. Next up, we've got Deliana. She has these masteries, and she is built in a Guardian set. This is very optional. I was thinking about Taunting set on her, and I think it could be okay, but kind of random. I actually quite like Guardian set. Having played with it more, I like Guardian for the consistent damage reduction for your team and the consistent healing on her. I also think a Reflex set could be pretty good. Her block buffs is on a 4-turn cooldown, and that feels pretty long. A Relentless set could also work really well. So it's sort of up to you. You got lots of options with her, to be honest. But that's one thing, like 4-turn cooldown on her AoE is quite long. And yeah, those were her masteries. Then we had Drexthar. He is like this. If you are struggling to get him with enough resistance, you can absolutely give him Unshakable. There's no shame in that. He's not going to get that much damage from Giant Slayer, but it will give him obviously more damage than otherwise. And he is built like so. He's in triple perception. 450 resistance is what you're aiming for. So the priority, he's actually 161 speed. So with him, with his build, he doesn't need any speed. The key things, number one, the key thing, you want to have 450 resistance for hard, just to make it as consistent as possible. You want to have about 250 accuracy, I think, for hard, just to, again, make it as consistent as possible. And then you want him to have as low speed as possible. Then just give him some defensive stats, right? Then after that, he's got lots of HP. He probably doesn't, certainly for hard, and with this particular team, they're so tanky. You can see how tanky they are. He doesn't need anywhere near that much HP. Give him a bit more defense or more damage if you want. Crit rate and crit damage are also optional for damage. It's up to you, but again, just prioritize that resistance, low speed, good accuracy so he can burn, and then just enough tankiness so he doesn't die. And that's really your key there. Perception sets help, stone skin sets help, all that sort of stuff. Who else do we have in here? We had, I've forgotten, brain fart. Covered them. Yes, Helicath and your girl. Okay, Tanix. Helicath, he is in here in triple resilience. 244 speed, so he's fast. This is the speeds. This is the Helicath from one of my unkillable videos. That's actually, I'm not sure which I'm going to publish first, this one or that one. So stay tuned. If you haven't seen him running at this speed in an unkillable team, stay tuned. I'm going to have a video on it soon. But 244 speed. He has a bit of accuracy to land his debuffs, and then he's just got as high defense as possible, really cranking up his speed and his defense, and then trying to get his crit rate high. That's the main thing with Helicath, and his masteries are like so. And yeah, then the final one was Tanix. So her masteries are like this. So extending those decreased speed debuffs. She's in a Guardian set as well, and her stuff isn't even fully rolled up. With her, you just want her to be fast and have lots of HP, and she does need 100% crit rate. She only had 200 accuracy. You prefer that to be a little bit higher, to be completely honest, just to make sure you're landing those debuffs, but it worked okay. She benefits a lot from this mastery here. What's it? Charge focus, 20 more accuracy, because she only has one skill that has a cooldown, right? So she benefits a lot from that. But she needs to crit to land AoE decreased speed. So yeah, building her like this. And there you go, guys. That was the team. Like I said, full auto. Just click the heads when they eat you. And or just run it a few times and just get lucky. That can work as well. Full auto. Nice and straightforward. A whole bunch of champions that you can get for sure. And like I said, you can bring in champions like Lady Kimmy or champions like Shamrock if you're lucky and you have these champions. Like, they can come in and they can provide the increased speed, decreased speed, and then you could bring in other decreased defense champions, free up your Lydia for a different team. Like, Lydia's very, very good in Shamrock teams, in Inquisitor Shamail teams, right? So you could bring in Shamrock into this team and mix it up that way. So it's up to you. But guys, I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Cool team, right? Really fun to bring in Helicath and Deliana together. Yeah, I hope to see you soon. Hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.